Hello. Welcome back to the Tree of Life podcast. We are recording over the internet once again, but it was really nice seeing Kubi almost, gosh, oh my gosh, how many, was it a month and a half ago?
Yeah, it was. It's a while ago
Nearly
now.
2 months ago, I feel like already.
And it was a year ago since you were here
Yep.
last October. Because it was this
Yep.
last year.
Yep. I was there for Samhain. Yeah.
Yeah.
How's everything gearing up to Samhain in Glastonbury right now?
It's been pretty Samhainy. We've had the procession of Gwynep Neath down the high street this
Is that
week,
the
along
dragons?
with dragons. I'm not
Yeah.
sure quite where the dragons fit into the Celtic folklore, but they've added them nonetheless.
They're cool.
So we have a red and white dragon which fights at both Samhain and Beltane, and the one of them will win. I can't remember which one's which, and one
Is it
goes in.
like predetermined, or is there actually like an actual combat, like fighting?
Something. I think the white one is the Beltane one that wins, and that
Oh,
will,
okay.
and then the red one is the one that wins. It's like the idea of the seasons battling, and
Yeah.
then we give up, we surrender to the winter months, and the other dragon goes into the cave.
Well, that's an interesting like kind of aside. So you mentioned like, oh, I don't know why there's dragons. Like the dragons are cool, but there's people do dragons now. But what happens in 100 years when people are like, yes, we've been doing the two dragons have been fighting each other for 200 years, and it becomes the legend in the folk store. Uh,
I'm sure that's what happens with Glastonbury, with everything. Everything
yeah,
just becomes a myth because it's like a hodgepodge of different things, isn't it? Just
yeah. Well, that's kind of how just the other day I had a comment from someone that was like, "Oh, do you actually believe the moon is a chariot pulled by a god?" And that's common mythos is like the sun, the moon, or chariots being pulled. And it's like anyone who believes in the mythology, literally, you know, mythology is just oral stories that have been recorded, and those oral stories take on so many different elements as they're retold, just like the game of telephone.
Mm. Yeah.
And so we really, yeah, you really have to peel back those layers. Like, obviously, we know now that the moon is just a big rock in the sky that does so much. But my response to it was, yes, through science, we can understand the moon's just a big rock. But that rock does so many magical things for us. And when you take even those magical scientific things and roll that into the mythos, it's like the moon protects us. It literally provides our oceans like this churning force. And you could even argue that life as we know it wouldn't exist without the moon. And so even the science alone, you prove that the moon is this life giver protector. And that's already pretty mythopoetic at that point.
Yeah, there's a lot of magic in the sort of mundane, I think, that, goes into the bracket of scientific explanations for things. But also, though, was it hauled in? Because, there's this theory that maybe the moon was pulled into our orbit. There's a lot of people believe, I think it's the Atlanteans, and someone's written it. It's some sort of, I'm not going to say Socratic because I'm not sure if it is or whether it's Plato, but somebody mentions that our moon wasn't there before and now it is.
Interesting.
So I wonder if there sometimes myths aren't just totally metaphor and totally symbolic, but whether they have an essence of an old truth in them that
Hmm.
perhaps wouldn't be able to be explained by even science as we know it today. Like, how do you haul a moon-sized object into our orbit? But,
Right.
it's,
I think
potentially.
everything's fit, like a blend. There's an element of truth to all mythology. It kind of goes up and down. How much is there?
Yeah, 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 exactly. Like it's like so much of the King Arthur stuff. It kind of overlaps historic events with mythological stories, and we'll never really be able to fully pull either apart and be like, well, that was definitely made up and that was definitely fantastical
Hmm.
versus this. So it's an interesting thing, I think, and I like that we never really know. We can never
Yeah.
really fully corner it, which is part of the mysticism of being alive. It's just I love
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
great.
for sure. the only, there's, gosh, the idea of like truth and what is truth is so minuscule because all of history, as we've always been learned, is written by the victors, written by the conquerors, whatever. And so
Yeah,
even the history that we assume that we know is very limited in what we actually know.
yeah.
Especially the subjects that we're talking about when it goes to like the ancient past.
Yeah.
Um, but one thing we do know is that people love spooky season, and spooky season is
Exactly.
upon us.
Tis indeed. Yeah, there's an interesting myth about Gwyn ap Neith actually, which sounds like a historic documented fact, but it maybe is folklore or myth, which is that when Samhain happened, he was caught riding out with his ghostly hounds on the eve of Samhain across the lands of Glastonbury town from beneath the Tor, and a local priest, had to sprinkle or spray him with holy water to get rid of him.
Hmm.
And
I mean,
I'm
I
like,
wouldn't like that either.
yeah,
Yeah,
no one likes that.
yeah, it's
that.
rude.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
quite,
so what do you think it is about this time of the year that kind of creates these very like these stories of, creatures and riders in the mist and things like that and the darker forces? Like what do you think, it's something that's kind of global, really, anyone who has an autumnal season.
yeah, right. Well, for me, I really do believe that this time of year, the veil grows thin between the worlds.
Mm,
So that sort of access point to the other world becomes very real. And of course, with that door, that portal being open, we have access to, the good, the bad, and the ugly as well.
mhm.
So I think that's where that all comes from, and I think that's why you find it in different cultures everywhere. Is that that fascination with suddenly you can communicate with the ancestors on the other side.
Yeah. And I think, like just my own personal experience, just yesterday, I went for a walk when I canceled on you to record today instead of yesterday, because the weather is so back and forth, although it's pretty sunny today. And I just stood in the forest. And even though this time of year is obviously like the leaves are changing, things are starting to hibernate and things like that,
Mm.
it's still a very busy time of year. Like I was sitting in the middle of the forest, and I've never seen so many squirrels and birds moving about. It was such a busy time. I had these beautiful leaves, and then just all around me, squirrels, birds were all busy doing things before winter. And I remember, I think even last year we were talking about how even though it's so easy to get into the cozy mindset of let's
Mm.
just go ahead and hide in the bed covers
Yeah.
and really nest, is there's still this element of energy, this last boost before
Mm.
winter sets in. And I find that's something I've been reflecting on this autumn so far.
Well, having that sort of trying to push yourself and get the very last of those crispy summer,
Yeah.
late summer afternoons. I say late summer, we're definitely nearly in, like,
Yeah.
we're winter though, aren't we?
Yeah, I mean the sun's setting at like 7 here already, 6, something like that, and I'm sure it's even later there.
Oh yeah, our clocks went back, so we're heading towards, it's 5 p.m. dark. Yeah, it's pretty bad now.
Yeah. Yeah, but so it's easy to give up, but I
Yeah.
think even, literally as far as like, the final preparations for winter, but also I think spiritually as well, is this is one of the last good times to get a lot of really good spiritual energy before winter kind of sets in, especially in the Celtic world. I mean, the Celtic world is very dark in the winter.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, Samhain literally translates as summer's end. I mean, it's not over
Yeah.
until, the ghostly riders appears. You've got until the 31st of October to get stuff done. And even then, it's, the descent takes a while, doesn't it? For those really short days to start appearing. So yeah, it's nice to get out. And I think even doing things like twilight walks, night walks can be really magical when you can smell like the spices on the chimney
Mm,
breeze, like all the smoke coming out the chimneys, and the breeze smells really sort of crisp and beautiful. And yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I love smelling baked goods. I mean, we talk about our pumpkin spice lattes, but there's something about this time of year and then smelling something like like baked butter and cinnamon. It's just like it gives you this such a sense of love.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it really does. And It brings out the best parts of humans, I think, in that way.
Yeah.
Where they sort of get craftier and cozier and bake more. And yeah, it's that I suppose the beauty of this time of year is the with the invitation to come inwards, we come back to our skills, our inner skills, our kind of
Mhm.
inner worlds more as well.
We're taking a brief pause at some point in this video to give you our promotion for the day, which is always just us because no one wants to give us their money. And so, if you want to support Kubi and I, this is how you can do it. Kubi, what do you have going on?
So this month I am launching the Path of the Oak, which is it's basically a 2-year journey with me exploring druidry, ancestral magic, herbalism, folklore, working with the wisdom of the trees. So if you want to work with me, it's like monthly Zoom meetings and lots of beautiful PDFs that I've put together around all of these themes. Then please do hit that up. You can go to my website, which is down below somewhere.
KubiMaycrafts.com, link down below.
Yeah, it's good to join this month. That's when it all kicks off. So if anyone's thinking about it, do reach out.
Very good. Well, if you want to support me in my endeavors, I think the most themed one for this episode is going to be my book, The Glastonbury Tourist, which starts at the time of Samhain in Glastonbury. And it released a year ago, roughly now. And so if you want to support me, pick up a copy of this book. But I also have the Yule Story, which is very popular during the winter season. And then, of course, if you're around the Cincinnati area and would like to get a traditional hand-poke tattoo, please check out my website as well. But with that, let's get back to this conversation about the Samhain season and death.
Death.
Death. But yeah, what are the like some of the elements that maybe have come forward this year for you in your day-to-day life? Because at the end of the day, everything ends up being quite simple. We go through autumn, we're going to go through it again next year. But I find every year I'm reflecting on a different element based on what's going on in my life. So is there anything particular with you this time of year that you're kind of reflecting on when it comes to the autumn/spooky season?
Spooky season. So, with my OM group at the moment, we're working with the yew tree, and that's very much an access point to communication with the ancestors anyway. So that's been a real theme this last month, and perfect timing with Samhain coming up. But with it, the reminder that our ancestors on the other side aren't necessarily all good. We had this interesting discussion the other night of do is it just the good ancestors that make it across to the other world, or is it
Mm.
like the real world where it's a mixture of good and bad? I mean, if you
Yeah,
think
there's
about it,
some beef going on the other side.
yeah, and like, are there people, because we were all would have had murderers, for instance, in our family
Mm.
lineage down the line. Do you want to get in touch with those ancestors? So for me, it's been about learning the art of discernment and protection a lot with
Mm.
working with ancestors this year. And also, I think something's deepened with me this year around taking it seriously, that it's not just a fun kind of game to be communicating with the ancestors this time
Mm.
of year. It can actually be quite serious.
Yeah.
Um, often when you're working with the element of death, with the yew, it's very much about death and rebirth, but it asks something to die in order for something to be reborn. It's got a double-sworded kind of energy.
Yeah.
And all around me, I'm noticing like that theme playing out. Like I've had, like my dog's been at the vet's this week. He's all right, I think, but it was a little bit touch and go this week, and
Mm.
things like that. You think, gosh, these things are really real.
Yeah.
It's really real when you start working with spirit in the other world, and um, yeah, magical, but to be taken
Mm.
with, seriously. Yeah.
Yeah, we're both in our 30s. And I do feel that when I first got into paganism and to these alternative belief systems, I was definitely more apt to kind of play with it and
Mm.
kind of see it all as like this kind of spiritual playground, like what energies can I interact with, not really caring what energies I was interacting with as long as I was getting an experience. And I
Yeah.
think, looking back, the most explosive ritual I ever did was a fall and an autumn one. And I didn't know what element I was playing with. I just knew that there was a spiritual entity that I was feeling an energy from. And I was like, woo, let's just see where it goes, and now I'm much more reserved when it comes to just any energy that kind of comes along. I kind of have my set things that I work with. And if another thing is kind of felt, I'm like, I'm going to study you for a while before I interact.
Yeah, that's a good way to sort of think of it. Sort of study it and observe a little bit with
Mhm.
discernment first.
Yeah,
Yeah, because it's just like the real world. It's like as above, so below. Just
yeah.
like you get good and bad people here, you get good and bad people on the other side. It's
hmm Yeah, yeah. And I think, yeah, it's all about building that relationship with any kind of spirit that you're working with.
yeah,
Um, yeah,
absolutely.
because you don't know the intentions of spirits. They can have their own intentions. And, especially when talking about, like, let's say an ancestor, of looking at like a ghost, again, spooky season. Typically, if a ghost does exist, it exists because it has unfinished business. And so you have to think, what unfinished business would it have to deal with me? And typically it's a selfish thing. It's not because this ghost loves you, it's because it needs to
Yeah.
do something.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's a strange old thing, isn't it? And yeah, so yeah, been sort of thinking a lot about the themes of death, really.
Mm,
It's quite morbid, but also completely apt for this time of year. And, sort of thinking about what is the role, I suppose, of the ancestors once they've crossed over?
mm,
Because say if it's like your family love you and blah blah blah,
yeah,
and they die and they still love you from the other side. But what about the ancestors that didn't know you in this life? Are they
yeah,
still like rooting for you? And it's an interesting one. Like, is it their role to hand help down, or are we
yeah.
to hand healing back down the lineage?
I think it kind of depends. If our ancestors were kind of, let's, like awake in the sense of like spiritual, or if they were just drones to the life they lived and they didn't really ever question the spirit. I don't think those ancestors would really have much interest in any kind of spiritual
Mm.
connection in death. Um, one instance I remember is when I was doing like shamanic drum journeying and we were looking to connect with ancestors. It was always important to kind of ask, like, I want to connect with a helpful ancestor
Mhm.
spirit and not just a ancestor spirit. And I found that there was one time I was looking to connect with a ancestor spirit, and I came across one. And he had absolutely no idea who I was, had wanted nothing to do with me, and basically told me to fuck off. Um,
Oh, nice.
yeah, yeah. And so it's just like, yeah, just talking to some random bloke. I mean, it looked like a younger guy that maybe died in a war or something like that. And it's just like this dude died probably at 20, is like wandering the ancestral plane and sees like this, like feels this connection to some dude in the 21st century. It's just like, fuck off.
Yeah, right. And why would they? Why would they
Yeah.
care so much if they are that far down the lineage? And I think you're right. The most important thing is to always ask for an ancestor that's got your greatest good in
Yeah.
their interest. Someone who's really rooting for your greater good. Um, or sometimes I'll ask for specific things. I will actually. I've been sort of using the yew trees as a bridge, which is
Mm,
kind of, I think, what they're meant to be for. So, sort of connecting with the yew tree, I'll go up with copper rods, dowsing rods, and I'll say to it, is first of all, is the yew tree okay to be a bridge of communication between this world and the
mm.
other world? And I often feel like a blossoming in the heart of the yew tree is willing. And
Mm.
then I'll say, show me a yes, show me a no, so I can communicate with the rods. And it will do the whoop whoop thing with it and slide
Oh,
open and
interesting.
closed. Very cool. And then I'll say, can I speak to an ancestor that's got my greatest interest, that wants to protect and help me from the other side? And then I'll ask for specific things. I'll be like, and can I also get an ancestor that's specifically skilled at, say, I don't know, the art of patience, if it's something I want to
Yeah.
have, like, learn more about, or a skill, something like that, or that's particularly artful at navigating the spiritual realms when they were alive in this realm.
Yeah.
Or like, what's the nearest ancestor I have in my lineage that worked with shamanism? That has
Hmm.
my greatest interest at heart.
Yeah.
So things like that, very cool to work with.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. So definitely, yeah, get specific with your request for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, something I was kind of thinking about as well is using things like trees to connect to the ancestors. What do you
Mhm.
think about graveyards as a place to go?
Definitely. I mean,
Yeah.
that's where all the ancestors hang out.
Yeah, but at the same time, like, there's a lot of ancestors there. There's a lot of, families that you don't have a connection to, and there's a lot of energy going on there. So is it the best idea?
That is true, actually, because yeah,
Yeah.
I imagine it would almost be like a waiting list of like loads of people being, I want to talk, I want to talk.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But then the ewes are placed, well, the ewes were originally in graveyards before graveyards were graveyards, right?
Mm,
And these were sacred sites. So I would say, in terms of the energy of the land, you won't get a place more sacred than a churchyard.
yeah.
In particular, the high altar of where modern day churches are built. If
Mm,
you go in there with dowsing rods to connect in pagan ways, you'll find that still really effective. Like
interesting.
we went into a church today and somebody actually pointed that out and we were like, oh yeah, of course, the high altar in these churchyards and these churches are going to be still the most sacred energetic
Mm,
points of the land. Um, so it can be used both for Christianity and paganism if
yeah.
you're willing to connect to that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is really interesting because we know that so many churches were built on the old holy places. And but because it's been a church for so long, I personally am always inclined to be like, meh, I don't really want anything to do with it.
Mm.
But I do think maybe that's an American disconnect because while there's a possibility that the churches here were built on sacred land to Native American people, I don't think they were as intentionally done as it was done during the Christianization of Europe, simply because the way that Christianity moved across the United States was much more of a, just like they built a church wherever they got. They're like, we're here, build a church. I don't think they were as
Right.
concerned with like the actual location of it.
Right. It was more of a practical thing, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we need a post office and we need a church.
Yeah. Whereas I remember like, stories from Scandinavia when people were leaving Scandinavia and going to Iceland, they would take like their sacred totems from their homes or their pagan temples. And when they got to Iceland, they would throw them into the sea and then they would follow the totem to the shoreline. And then they would actually build their settlement where that totem fell.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah. So like they had much more of an intentional like way of landing. Whereas yeah, I think it was like, wow, there's so much land here in America. This is now mine. Build the temple.
Yeah, it is different out in America, isn't it? In that way as well. It's more kind of like, yeah, like we're saying, it's more practical. So you're not going to get the same connection to the land energy there. But I suppose I mean, what do you do to find the sacred spaces there? Do you just tune in when you're going for walks in?
Um, I think it is a bit difficult. You need to come visit me here, and we'll do some of this together.
Oh,
Um, because like I look into like obviously the Native American sites, like where were they building, even though this information is often very hard to find. In the sense of like I would like here in Cincinnati, I found a map of all the old sacred sites here, and they had a type of Stonehenge here in the area, and where it existed is literally smack dab in the middle of the city now. So like we have a place called Fountain Square, and where Fountain Square is where the Stonehenge was, um, which is really interesting.
yeah, isn't it? Do you think
Yeah,
that's a deliberate move to cover up some old energies?
it's always hard to say because there's so many layers of history. Like that wasn't the original location of the fountain, and then it got moved, but now it's there. And like one of the prime like cultural centers is there as well. and it's all city, there's like a tree there, and so there's so much of the natural presence lost, and you have a homeless person asking you for change while you're there, and so it can be really hard to like really feel that energy of like why they built the Sunhenge there, because
Yeah.
it has been so modernized. But in the sense of like the neighborhood I'm in, I kind of came to this space and I was looking around for apartments, and then this like serendipitous, there's an apartment for lease. Oh, it's really cheap. Oh, I
Mm.
meet my girlfriend here. Oh, the tattoo shop is here. Like all this stuff kind of came together. And then I come to find out that there was a spring that existed like a block from me. And it's like, oh, okay, things are starting to come together. So I guess it is like you kind of follow your intuition, and then you find out later on, oh, there was a spring here at some point, Okay, yeah, it starts adding up.
That's really cool, isn't it? It's like life. Sometimes I think life leads us to places, and then later on it makes sense. It's like, oh yeah, the sacred things are still there and still around.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what about you with your experience of this month, this year, this particular year of your life?
Hmm. Well, I
Um,
definitely think we could talk about death a lot.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's do it because
Let's talk about
people
death.
people are scared of talking about death, and really this time of year is that invitation to get close to it and to peer through the veil at it. And it's an interesting one, isn't it? It's like why do we still fear death when it's such a natural, unavoidable part of life? That's been a
Hmm.
big question.
Have you ever feared death, or do you currently fear death?
Oh, um, I think I used to before
Hmm.
plant medicine. Uh, and then, as anyone knows that will have done plant medicine, you get very used to the art of dying,
Hmm.
because that's what plant medicine essentially is. It drags you into the underworld. It makes you experience death of ego, death of sense, death of self and reality. And then it brings you back to the light and puts you back together in a new way.
Yeah.
Every single trip. In particular, there was one trip I did when I was about, it was around my 30th birthday, and I did ayahuasca for the first time, and that went great. And the second ceremony was the second night, and I was like, okay, well, I feel like a little cocky. So I asked it to dissolve my ego.
Yeah.
I think I remember the guy running it was like, "Are you sure you want to make that your intention?" And I was like, "Yeah, let's just run with it.
Be
Let's
fine.
just do it." And oh my God, she put me through hell, ayahuasca, that night. She
Mm.
made me die and be reborn 1,000 times. And I felt literally like my cells were exploding within me and dying. And then it was almost like I was in so much physical and emotional and spiritual pain that night that the idea of passing over to death was like a walk in the park at that point.
Mm.
And I kept thinking like, oh, if only I could just die. Oh my God, please take me. Like this would be so much easier than continuing with this plant medicine tonight.
Mm.
And I would get as close to the light and she'd be like, oh, you're almost dead. And then boom, no, you've got to do it all again. Um, and it really taught me something about life and death, or and that almost like the part of losing ourselves as we get old, whether it's through dementia or physical aging, is a really integral part of the death process. Not just because the body has to shut down, but because we have to loosen our grip on the ego.
Yeah.
We have to lose that sense of self, the physical body and things. And it's only when we're in that much pain that you can just go like, oh, sod it, I want to die.
Mm.
Let me cross over, it's easier. So that was really interesting. And now I've gone through that process, I don't actually fear death at all.
Mm.
Sometimes I even feel kind of excited about it. Like I love life, but I'm also equally I feel like there's a lot of trust that I have that the other world is maybe like the big
Mm.
world, and this is like the little world, actually.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think for me, anytime I think of like death or I get the paranoid mind of like, if I go ride my bike or something, I'm like, oh, what if someone hits me or whatever. The only thing I don't like about the idea of death is I feel like I have so much more to do. And so I would
Mm.
almost feel like cheated in the sense it's like I have, lived a really great life so far, and I want to continue to do that. It's not for any kind of selfishness, like I just want to do all these vices in life. I just want to drink or whatever. It's like, no, I just want to do things. And then I feel
Right.
like I'm going to reach a point at some point in the future where, I'm like, I feel like I've done enough stuff. Ugh. And then like just go. Because I've never really wanted to live this, endless grind where you're just like, oh, working for retirement so you can retire, so you can enjoy the last 15 years of your life. I want to do work that I love and I want to get shit done. Like I feel like that's why I'm alive. And
Yeah.
so the idea of death is just like, well, my whole purpose of being alive is to get shit done. So why am I dying now?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's a really hard thing to accept that as well. Like, what if life does suddenly decide, like, you've completed your mission, even if
Yeah.
you think you've got more to do? Like, how does the ego then deal with that?
Yeah. But I think, something just to throw out that I constantly think about is the over-preservation of life that is prominent throughout our society.
Mm.
We're so obsessed with living as long as possible to the point where we put ourselves through so much more torment than we have to, thinking about like, chemotherapy. Like, yes, chemotherapy works for some degree, it can save lives, but how many lives has it also over elongated and ruined that quality of life? Like most of the stories I personally know are people that went through chemo, lived an extra 6 months to a year, were miserable, and then died. It's just like, to
Mhm.
me, knowing you have this death sentence and just embracing it and understanding it, hey, it's just my time to go, rather than trying to push for that extra year or two.
God,
Especially since this mentality seems to come from Christianity, which is very odd.
I know. I was talking about this with someone the other day, and I was saying, I wish there were more places where you could open up a clinic and have almost like a death doula thing
Mhm.
where you give them plant medicine and you go, hey, look, this is what's on the other side. You've got nothing to fear. You're not going to
Yeah.
hell. You're going to a really magical other realm. So, let's prepare you for that. Let's spiritually prepare you for death. And so many cultures and spiritual religions around the world talk about the importance of learning the art of death while we're alive, so
Hmm.
that when it does come knocking, we can just surrender. But
Mm.
I mean, of course, we're spring chickens in the realms of like the aging process in many ways. I mean, maybe it gets a lot more real. I often think like, how hard would it be just to accept death? But then when it comes to it, I imagine it's really tricky. And you probably
Yeah.
that desire to fight and cling to life is very strong.
Yeah. Well, I remember I was reading that book. I think I probably mentioned it on the podcast. I read it earlier this year when my grandmother's passed. It was the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. I
Mm.
could get into a whole thing about the author, and at the end, I've learned that the author was not that great of a person, but the actual book itself was
Hate it when
it,
it happens.
I know. Oh my gosh. Like the author spent this entire time talking about how to process death and how to live a good death.
Mm.
And at the end, he died like ashamed and disgraced. And it's just like, oh shit.
Oh no.
But so I acknowledge that, but let's talk about the content of the book. That was pretty good, if anyone knows what book I'm talking about. But one of the things he talks about, and I think the thing that's important to note is when it comes to the author, he was talking a lot about his teachers. And I think his teachers are the one I like to focus on because he talked about one who was preparing for death and basically decided when to die. He was, sitting there and he was just like called, the writer in and he's like, it's my time. And then he looked to the ceiling and died. Like he just knew the moment he was going to die and was just like, I'm good to go.
I mean, that's super organized, isn't
Like,
it?
yeah,
That's a guy that like plans ahead.
yeah, like his spirit, like he like was his spirit, and his spirit, it's like literally just like opened the door and was like, peace, and just left.
There's so many stories like this, aren't there? Of
Yeah,
like I've heard of like people that like Inuits that they feel they're slowing down their village or their tribe. They will take themselves out into the cold, out into the snow, and they'll sit there and just will themselves into death.
yeah.
That's incredible. Like, is it possible? Maybe we've forgotten the actual art of dying. Maybe it is possible
Mm.
to will ourselves to death when it's time.
Yeah, I think like dogs do that. You know, dogs when they're feeling really ill will try to just wander into the forest and die.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, like it's kind of built into their psyche, and I think in a little bit is ours as well. But something I kind of want to point out is I think we talk about like hell, the bad place. I think that the only way to enter hell is to die with fear.
Mm. Yeah.
You know, because hell is a place of fear and torment, and I feel like with that energy you take with you into death is the energy that you kind of take into the afterlife. And of course, if you're dying with great fear about death, you know, I feel like you're going to end up in a land of fear.
Do you know what? This is one of my biggest bugbears with the Christian belief system.
Mm.
And I'm sorry if Christians are listening to this, but it'll be interesting to see people's perspective on this. But
I feel like we get the Druidic Christians if we get any Christians.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
But please challenge me on this if there's something I'm missing. But I feel like by programming people with the fear of death, like as in hell, you are setting them up, like you said, to manifest that, to manifest
Yeah.
hell and fear, and to die in that internal fear. Um, I think you're so right. It's that thing of like, why not choose to, step over that threshold of fear and embrace, if you were to embrace death, you die with joy in your heart and gratitude for a life well lived,
Mm.
then, maybe you enter that world, you manifest that world instead.
Yeah, I mean, we're about to enter dangerous territory. So put on
Yeah.
your tinfoil hat or whatever, your dangerous territory. Maybe I should start this by saying I am not advocating for current like human sacrifice. I'm not advocating for that.
Oh,
Obviously, it's
God.
something we left behind for a reason. But I've had dark thoughts where I'm like, you know, if I had to choose, especially in the ancient past, we're talking about a past where it was more common to die in childbirth, disease, war, animals, malnutrition, such a menagerie things that you know could possibly kill you. Life expectancy is 30 to 40 years old, maybe. And all of a sudden you have an opportunity to get really drunk and or high, be a part of a massive ceremony, and then be sacrificed to a greater good. Like that does sound pretty enticing.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe the first bit. I'm like, I'm not sure about the Wicker Man part. I'm like, I
What about
think
the Wicker Man part? You know, maybe not burning alive.
Yeah, I mean, still think about going heroically. It's like is it the I don't know if it is it Germanic or Norse where they push themselves out onto the sea in boats, or
As
is it
far as like,
or is that Lord of the Rings? Hang on.
I think that's Lord of the Rings.
Maybe it's Lord of the
Same thing.
Rings. But I like that's a nice idea, isn't it? Like just
Yeah.
gracefully letting the sea take you.
Well, I was just I mentioned this in the last podcast I was doing as well. I just finished a book called Land of the Spotted Eagle about the Lakota people, and the greatest death for the Braves, their warriors, was to die in battle. And this is
Mm,
a constant theme we see in warrior cultures around the world is, you know, for them, death in battle is the greatest honor. And so
yeah.
they had absolutely no fear of death because it was built into them from a young age that death is the highest glory.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's it. It's like an honor to die. And
Hmm.
because I think there is such an ingrained belief in the reincarnation process from these pagan cultures, it's an you're going to be a spirit ally on the other side. It's not
Hmm.
you're going to this like you're not going to the ground beaten by worms. You're not going to hell. You're going to this other land, and it's a land of great promise. And
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
and I think that's such a healthier mentality. You know, if you are like, you know, a modern day soldier or something like that, like I would much rather have the mentality of if I'm going to die, you know, I'm going to die, you know, doing something important, defending something that's important, and I'm dying with purpose. And especially thinking of like, you know, World War One or World War Two, you know, you have all these young men dying such a young death. You know, it gives it more purpose than like, nope, you get this one life, that's it, it's over after this one. It's like, well, then why did all these 15-year-olds die, you know, fighting each other in
Yeah.
great wars? It
Yeah.
makes it so pointless.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, interesting thought there. And what about you? Have you ever had any, say, like near death experiences yourself?
Ayahuasca, naturally.
Oh,
Yeah, no, I think I mean, when I was born, I had a near-death experience, and so with a lot of things, I think the way we're born kind of affects our life. And I had a very spiritual birth because I learned later in my life that my grandfather spiritually communicated with me in the womb at my birth, which is really interesting. Because I was struggling a lot to get out, and I think I had my umbilical cord wrapped around me, and I was like moving a lot, and so I wasn't coming out. And my grandfather says that he went into a broom closet, entered a meditative state, and communicated with me to calm down and that everything was going to be okay. And then when he came out of the closet, I had left the womb.
What?
Um,
That's
yeah,
mad.
yeah. And then after the I didn't have any oxygen, and so they were like, putting air into me. And then my lung was popped while they were putting air into me. And
Oh,
it just so happened, I mean, normally this was like a death sentence, especially at the small community hospital I was born in. And it just so happened that that weekend or that week, there was a doctor there that was an expert in repairing infant lungs that had been popped.
what are the chances of that?
Yeah, and so like I got like, it's just like this kind of like passing of the two things. And I take that in my Odinic way as like the gift that Odin gives us is the breath of life. And so I think in a way, I was asphyxiated, spiritually communicated with, and given this breath of life all in the beginning. So I think in a way, I was like destined for like to be an Odin bitch my whole life.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that kind of makes sense, doesn't it? And it
Yeah,
does make you wonder what sort of gets imprinted at such a young age, sort of somatically into the body.
yeah,
That gratitude for the breath of life and that
yeah.
devotion to Odin as a gratitude for that.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I was
Yeah.
10 days.
So you were 10 days late. Oh, that explains
No,
everything.
no dramatic story. I was just fat. I was just fat.
Fat and
And
cozy.
yeah.
No, I think that explains everything. I think you're a very relaxed person as well. Like you had a very calm death or like rebirth. Because that's the thing, like, isn't the birth of ourselves just the other side of the door of death in the Celtic way of seeing things? Like here is us being born, here is a death. And we're
Yeah,
so close to that. So it just makes so much sense they're both interconnected.
totally. It's a really weird thought, isn't it, to think, how much sets us up for the whole thing and where one begins and one ends. Yeah, it's a real trip, isn't it?
Yeah, so maybe that means in the previous life you lived, you had a very cozy end. You were just hoveled up in your little witch's cottage in the last life or whatever, and you're like, oh, I guess I'll go ahead and get reborn, or something.
I suppose I can die if I
Yeah, let
have.
me eat a few more biscuits before I go.
Yeah, maybe I didn't realize like that I was leaving the cave. Maybe my mother's womb was like the cozy cave, and I was like, I'm not leaving here. I got nuts,
Yeah,
I got food, I got all the good things. I got
yeah.
yeah,
Let me
yeah.
eat through my belly button.
Oh, it's funny. Yeah. Although annoyingly, I should have been a Beltane baby. I should have been born on the
Hmm.
1st of May, and that would have been cool.
Yeah, that would have been cool. Yeah, it is interesting. So bringing up like reincarnation, like I believe in reincarnation pretty well. But the actual like logistics of it are always up for debate. Like how
Mm.
long is the reincarnation process, So if we're dead, we die. Do we just immediately like open our eyes, we're a new baby? Or is there like a time in between that lags in the reincarnation process?
Oh, I used to know this really cool fact, and I can't remember the specific numbers of it, but I know the Buddhist Tibetans used to believe that it took so long for the soul to go from one body to another, and then years, hundreds of years later, if not, you know, years and years later,
Yeah.
they find out that that exact number that they gave is the exact time it takes for a cell, when it becomes, impregnated, to then develop the pineal gland as a fetus.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that's when it starts to become conscious, I guess, because it starts
Yeah.
dreaming.
Mm.
And I was like, and it was like the specific day of pregnancy, and they managed to guess that as the exact time it takes from a soul to go from one life
Mm.
to another. So I've always gone on that, but now I can't remember the number. That's not very handy.
Yeah. Well, then we can get into the release of DMT into the brain as well,
Mm.
which I think, has been, researched for a long time as the possibility that that is the afterlife. Like the actual burst of DMT just right into the pineal gland at the time of our death. It's a time dilating substance. And so we get this afterlife that lasts for, as long as the DMT is, put into our body.
Yeah.
And at the end of that is when the soul transfers into the next one.
Oh my God, that's a trip because I mean, obviously DMT trips feel like forever. They feel
Yeah.
like a never-ending expanse of time.
Yeah, but it's like 15, 20 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe that's literally it. And
Yeah.
who knows, maybe the light at the end of the tunnel that you see when you're dying is the lighting at the hospital of where you're about to be born.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I remember thinking that with like near-death experiences, if someone does like, enter into the other side, oxygen starts to leave their body, which triggers the brain to release DMT. And
Yeah.
so the reason that we have near-death experience visions is because the DMT is literally entering our brain at that time,
Yeah.
and we're starting to trip, and that's why everyone sees something slightly different. Oh, I see Jesus, I see Ganesh, or
Yeah.
Odin or whatever. It's because that's what our brain is like transferring into us as the afterlife.
That does give a lot of evidence, really, that what you see when you pass over is that world that your inner world that you're
Hmm.
manifesting. Whatever you're
Yeah.
expecting is what you'll manifest when you cross over.
Yeah.
So if you believe in the kingdom of heaven, you're going there. If you believe in hell, you're going there. Like
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it's
It's whatever you manifest, really. But I do think that like it's not what is actually there. It is what glasses we're wearing when we die. So if
wow.
you're wearing your Christian glasses, what you're seeing is the afterlife, and you're seeing, all the things that actually exist there. But because you have your Christian's glasses on when you died, you're seeing Jesus and God and all that stuff. But you're still interacting with the same spirit world that everyone else is. And
Yeah.
obviously, we're all trying to get to more of the essence of what the great mystery is. What is it like without our spiritual human glasses on? And I think that's what we're all trying to figure out.
Oh, I feel like maybe this is the cosmic joke, is that
Yeah.
there is no one truth. It is literally just that we are co-creators with the
Mm,
whatever the blank canvas is, the
yeah.
universe. The universe is a blank canvas and we project our reality onto it and
Yeah.
then it becomes it. And then
Mm,
perhaps there's nothing more to it than that. It's just this big manifesting program
mm,
that solely relies on our inner world to project something at it for
yeah.
it to exist.
Yeah. And I think, as I've said for a long time, I think the Buddhists got it mostly right. And the sense of like enlightenment is, I think the enlightenment is learning to break that cycle. Is you've learned enough about the great mystery that you're able to see for what it really is. And once you're able to actually grasp the essence of enlightenment, then you are able to look aside and say, no, I'm not coming back. I'm going into the next one. Or with a bodhisattva, is you're
Mhm.
like, I do see the great mystery, but I do want to go back so I can again teach the great mystery to others.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah.
There's some sort of choice in that.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's a fascinating subject, isn't it? It's just one that really like perpetuates and
Yeah.
you can't really get to the end of it. You can't really get to the end and go, that's what it is. You can't corner it.
Yeah, of course, because it's not a one thing. It's not a one-dimensional object. You can be like, here it is, the great mystery.
Yeah. Here's a question for you,
Mm.
bringing it back to the ancestors. So, to what extent are we truly individuals on our own individual soul mission if we have ancestors from a soul group that
Mm.
are expecting us to continue perhaps their spiritual missions?
Yeah, that's a difficult one. Because are we talking, the Norse have a concept that we're kind of reborn in our family line. So
Mm.
we are connected to that endless thread of ancestors going back to infinity. And so we're reborn within that ancestral cycle. Or
Mm.
is all spiritual juice all just from the same bucket? Or are we limited to the spiritual juice of the ancestor tree that we come from, kind of sense?
Right. Yeah, yeah.
Or are we
I
all just truly from the one great being?
and what do you think? What's your perspective on it?
Um, I think I think I'm more in we're all from the one great being, the world tree, the tree of life, all that. I think we all kind of descend from its branches and its fruit. Versus it being limited to just what is within our current lineage. And the reason I think that is because you encounter people in your life where you're clearly like, this is your first go around, isn't it? Like, this is your first essence in time on this planet Earth.
Yeah.
And that wouldn't be possible if we only descended from our ancestral lines. I think we are there is new fruit still being produced off the great tree, the great mystery.
Yeah. Unless it's like the banking system and then they just keep printing out new money.
Yeah, yeah,
They're like,
yeah.
oh,
Maybe, maybe.
the old souls are getting a bit rubbish. Let's just print out some new
Yeah.
souls.
Well, because you think that, like, you look at our planet now, you would have a planet of 8 billion people. As far as we know, there has never been a time in human history where 8 billion of us have been here on together at the same time, which
Yeah,
means we've had to print off new money. Like, there
yeah,
has to be new souls that have never been born before living right now on this planet, mixed in with the old souls that have been, hashing it out for the last 4,000, 50,000 years or whatever.
yeah, right, exactly. Exactly. That has to actually be the case, doesn't it?
And if there's anything that these have proven, is that we're living in a world full of new souls that have not had the experience of living here before.
Yeah.
Yeah, which
Unless
is
they
why I
come
think
from
there's so
other
many
places.
people looking for answers.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely I've experienced that where somebody just has this like this lightness about them as well. It's like, wow, you don't have any soul baggage there, do you? You lucky thing.
Yeah.
But then again, some people might be coming from other dimensions altogether.
Well, that's a conversation I don't know how to have.
That's so vast.
Yeah, that's why I stay on this plane of existence as best I can, because once you pull in other dimensions, I'm like, oh, blah, blah. No, it's just like the
Yeah,
multiverse. Can't do it.
yeah. I kind of wonder if it's like I think everyone's on their own. I like to believe that we're on our own separate soul mission and that we
Mm,
have our own personal relationship to this one kind of God type energy.
yeah.
And then beyond that, there's like your favorite souls, like almost like your
Mm,
best mates that you actively choose to come down and experience them again. And you might swap
yeah.
souls, like your mum might be your sister in the next life or whatever.
Mm.
Um, I do feel like that happens, but I feel like we're not limited to that. Like we probably can go off and do our own separate soul thing and do our, whatever's needed for the growth of the soul, I guess.
Yeah. Well, that kind of calls me to think of I've never really talked about it publicly because it is a highly personal thing.
Mm.
And I'm a pretty private romantic individual, but I've really been trying to rack my brain for years now on an instance that happened when I did ayahuasca, and it wasn't during the ceremony, but me and this woman there basically immediately thought we were like soulmates immediately.
Mm.
And it was like a really weird timing. Like, she was already in a relationship and I was kind of a wanderer still. But it was just like, it was so intense and it was so real. And it was like, no, this has to be real. But after we left Ecuador, everything fell apart. And I'm like, but how is that possible when all of the elements came together? And for me, it makes a lot of sense. Like, well, maybe in a past life you were. And we encounter these people
Mm.
in our lives. It's like in the past or in a past existence, you were lovers or you were best friends. And that's why the moment you meet, there's such an instant spark because your
Yeah,
souls have met before. But in this essence, in this reality, in these bodies, you're not meant to be together.
right. Like when it actually hits the ground running, it doesn't make sense for
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I think that can happen, and maybe it's a little bit of stubbornness from the other side where you're like, no, we will meet again, damn it.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
And spirit kind of has the last laugh because it's like, well, what was the point in that?
Yeah. Well, and then you go to your guides and your helpers, and in this instance, this person was from another country with me, and I had a spiritual battle with myself where I'm like, no, I met this person, we're supposed to be soulmates,
Mhm.
but all spirit has ever told me is you have to be in the Americas, you have to be here, to teach the medicine, to share the medicine. You can't leave, and like if I was going to pursue this, I would have to leave. I'm
Yeah.
like, well, I was so in conflict, but now sitting back and thinking of it this way, it's like, no, that makes a lot of sense. Like, I was put on this existence to help here.
Yeah, yeah. It makes sense the most
Yeah.
that way, doesn't it? It's fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, are you actively, um, for Samhain this year,
Mm.
are you actively seeking to build a connection with an ancestor or to use that opportunity of they say it's 12 days at the other side. Some people say it's less or more.
Mm.
Whilst this sort of the thinning of the veil is occurring and communication gets much easier with the other side. Yeah, are you taking advantage of it this year with anything?
No.
I've
um,
given up on my pledge this year.
what was it?
Saying you've got enough on your plate this year without
Jesus, yeah. Um,
ancestors.
yeah, I've had to really recoil myself from a lot of like spiritual activities. Now, it's interesting because like the tattoo is obviously mixed with that. Like I'm still doing these like spiritual acts of service, but my personal relationship to spirit is much more in the everyday mundane. And
Mm.
that's been my trick this year is I don't have the time for elaborate ceremony. I don't have the time to do what I used to do to connect. And so it's been a challenge for me to learn how to live this kind of normal domestic life, going to fucking Costco and the pumpkin patch and learning how to, be connected still, which I think is good because that's much more relatable to everyday people that listen to this podcast or watch my YouTube channel. Is I'm kind of I get to relate more, I think, to the everyday. And
Yeah.
so for me, all I've done this year is I have a small ancestral altar in this house, and I set it up with my partner. And so we have pictures of our grandparents there together.
Oh,
Uh,
that's so nice. I mean, I think that's sort of embedded with a lot of meaning.
yeah,
That's what most people do, and I think maybe they're the nicest ancestors to connect with, the ones that
yeah,
we had beautiful relationships with while they were alive in our
yeah,
life.
yeah. And I think, and her and I were talking about it the other day. Like I have one grandfather left. This grandfather I had the spiritual connection with, which again, there's a certain spiritual mythopoetic way to look at that. Like this grandfather that was the first being I interacted with in this world is, the last grandfather, alive as well. There's something there. And
Mm.
so I feel it is, this busy life I have, 6 days working and only one day off. I haven't had a lot of time to visit with him, even though he is close by. And so that's something I am trying to adjust. It might not be directly spiritual in the sense of having a ceremony in Uga Buga, but my grandfather's still alive. He's here in this plane. Why don't I spend more time with him?
Yeah, like
And
actually deal with the ancestors that are here right now.
yeah. And so I think that, something could be relatable for people as well, is if you have those elders in your family still alive, I know it can be hard to be around them, because you hear the same old stories and you might just get stuck doing something boring like having lunch. But we will miss those times when we can't have them. And so I think for me right now, I'm much more physical in this realm for Samhain of why not spend time with the ancestors that are still with us. There is more life ahead of me where I can connect to them in a spiritual way.
Yeah. Oh, that's so lovely. I think that's a really poignant point. We do so much of seeking the beyond, and actually we miss so much of what's actually here, don't we?
Hmm. Yeah.
I'm doing a little bit of both for Samhain. I've got my parents visiting next week, which I'm really looking forward to. So we're going to do some fun things with them, and also we've got the ancestors to deal with, the spiritual ancestors to go and explore and give our gratitude and thanks to at Chalice Well. They do their candle lit ceremony, so we're going to head over there and light a candle, throw
Yeah.
our herbs onto the fire, and potentially do a deep dive into the realms whilst the portal is open.
Nice. Do you
Yeah.
have any grandparents alive? I don't know if I've ever asked you.
No, they died a long time ago now,
Mm.
both of mine on both sides, which is really sad. Yeah, yeah, it's really sad. I wish that I could have known them sort of into my 20s a bit more.
Yeah. We're much more aware of ourselves.
Yeah, yeah, just I even to trace like the parts of yourself, like like you see essences of yourself in your other
Mm.
relatives, and you go, oh yeah, that's that little bit, and you can connect over those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what would be your advice to people? We're at the end of the podcast here. What can people do to connect a little bit more?
To the ancestors on the other side, I would say go and find yourself a nice yew tree. They are definitely the bridges,
Mm,
according to the Irish Ogham of the Celtic folklore. Um, and they're the sort of gatekeepers of the other world realm, really. And I think to build a relationship with them, to go in with a lot of discernment and obviously safety, and yeah, to reiterate what we said before, to ask for those that have the best interests for you at heart, and to build a a relationship with them. So to bring offerings for them every time you go there. Maybe bring some yew leaves back with you for an altar at home, some yew berries. Be careful not to eat the yew berries because they will kill you.
Unless you really want to meet the ancestors, but don't do that, kids.
Don't do that, kids. Um, and yeah, just to sort of spend time in communion with them, and you can use dowsing rods. I would recommend getting dowsing rods because they're fascinating things to use when it comes to communication with the other realm. Or you can simply ask your ancestors to show through in your dreams, and to keep a dream journal over these 12 days either side of Samhain, um, because that is the realm they come from, and they can and will and do communicate that way. I had a bit of communication with my nan, uh, which was so exciting actually a few years ago, and I woke up and all my books fell off the shelf. And my mum woke up at the exact time the books fell off the shelf, even though she lives another part of England altogether. So that was all
Interesting.
quite strange. So yeah, they do come through the dream realm as well.
Yeah,
Um,
I was just looking up right now because, you say yew tree. Yew trees are so uncommon in the States. Like, I don't even think they're
oh,
native to the US or the North America. If they are, they're like East Coast or something like that. They're definitely not around me. So I was kind of looking up other alternative trees of death.
oh,
Uh,
nice.
yeah, yeah. And one that popped up, and this is probably more connected to Christianity. Well, it
Mm,
goes back to ancient Greek, is the cypress tree. Apparently, is commonly planted in graveyards, and
interesting.
there's many different varieties of cypress trees as well.
And you have lots of those in the
Yeah,
US?
they're everywhere. Yeah.
Really
So
good.
cypress would be really good. I would say personally, I don't think it's directly, but either an ash tree or a oak tree as well would probably be good substitutes. Ash
Mm,
tree is the world tree is an ash tree, and the Norse mythologies, and that's connected to everything.
mm,
And it's also the tree that Odin hangs himself from. And then the oak tree is connected to Thor and is just seen as in general like a very sacred tree. So I would say an old oak
mm.
would also be a good connection.
And also the birch, the birch trees, which are used in shamanic ceremonies everywhere across the world as
Mm.
gatekeepers of the other world realms.
Yeah, that would also be good.
Mm. Yeah. And if failing all of that, just get a pumpkin and just have a nice
Get a bloody pumpkin.
pumpkin soup, pumpkin chai latte, pumpkin carving session with some friends. Watch some spooky ghost films, and even
Mm,
just have a sharing circle with your friends about, lighting a candle and saying what you are grateful for your ancestors
yeah.
that passed over, and indeed the ones that are still here today.
Yeah, I think that's there's a double thing here with like how unpopular spooky season is now.
Mm.
Because I mean, obviously Halloween as a kid here in the States was super big, trick or treat, great. But I feel like because the younger generation grew up with that with such a fierce force, a lot of people now, like everywhere in the neighborhood I live in, is decorated. Like people decorate more for Halloween, I think, than they decorate for Christmas these days. And it's getting more elaborate. So I think it's never been more accessible to be into Samhain, the death traditions, because if you put a bunch of skeletons in your yard this time of year, you're not seen as weird. So if you want to get as macabre as you want, you can now,
Yeah,
when it comes to like
absolutely.
pagany decorations. But I also think it's never been harder to do that in a traditional way,
Yeah.
because we're so over flooded with the plastic and the synthetic. And so going back to as natural things as possible when it comes to your decorations and your celebrations, I think is really big.
Yeah, like animal bones. Put some animal bones out,
Yeah.
on the wall around your house. Love some good animal bones.
Gosh, I went into the tattoo shop the other day and I was warned, like, oh, when you open the fridge, there's going to be a pig's head in there. And like, luckily, I'm the person that's like, it's whatever. It's not the strangest thing I've ever heard.
Oh my God, that's so funny. You found your place.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we apparently are allowed to tattoo pigs, like dead pigs, and so it's one of the things you can practice on. So occasionally, there's a pig's head in a fridge.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you, Kubi. It was good seeing you again. I'm always sad when we don't get to record in person, but I'm also very glad that we've gotten to record so much in person over these. Oh my gosh, we've almost been doing this 2 years. Oh,
Wow, we're
whoa.
old timers now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you to everyone that listens to us ramble on about these things. Make sure you share your thoughts in the comments below, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Tree Life Podcast.
Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye bye.